Happy birthday, Twin Town. Kevin Allen's film from 1997 is 24 years young this week. This today is not a review of the film as such, more a kind of signpost to redirect you towards the film and all the modern perspectives that can bring. Namely, that despite Twin Town's status as a cult film, particularly here in Wales, it is actually a genuine classic movie in its own right. My mantra when introducing newbies to the film throughout the noughties always was, there, it's shit, but we love it. But I realised then on 2015 when revisiting the film just how incorrect and dismissive that was. So Nick, why should we kowtow to your judgment, Mr. Wales in the Movies with your 200 average views? Well, I'd say to that I'm not only somebody who's watched every single film set in Wales, but I've watched every single film set in Wales, and in most cases sat in a quiet room for myself afterwards and pondered just precisely why it was so fucking boring. However, not this time. Now, before we continue, I've been doing my research recently, and everything that I read tells me that if I ask you guys to click a like on the video at the beginning, then there's a much greater chance that you're gonna, click a like on the video at the beginning. It really does help this channel a lot. Also, you could consider making a comment, even if it's just to say something like,
"Oh, fucking twat."
Anyway, for now, tits and shandy is a love. When it came out in '97, me and my mates got a copy on VHS and watched it 3 times that first weekend. And that's a process we repeated at least twice over the next couple of months. Twin Town wasn't set on a farm or overly bothered about the Welsh culture or language. It wasn't burdened with victimhood, a social conscience or political messaging. I wasn't aware why this was so important in a Welsh film, back then when I had a life, probably because I'd never seen a Welsh film and definitely never contemplated one. The various reasons for Twin Town's success centre around its ability to make both Welsh and British people laugh together, at the Welsh of course, and Kevin Allen's skill in something called counterpoint.
I'm going to say out one more time. Out!
Fuck off! Ah!
It's clear that Kevin Allen wanted to counter a particular type of cosy tourist board image of Wales. Yet I would argue that this Celtic, if you like, image of Wales is not widely held enough in a global field of vision to need countering in the first place. I also think it would be fair to say that the British stereotype of Wales is actually closer to what Allen provided to that which he felt the need to subvert. Saying that, I am very glad that he felt the need to subvert it. Twin Town explores Welsh stereotypes, but in a way which is light, self-depreciating, and often hilarious.
Okay, well, trying to follow through on these. Very, very unusual.
I was wondering if you could get me more of those mushrooms.
Allen has claimed that if Twin Town is about anything, it's about the futility of revenge. As a viewer, I'm free to, and will, disagree. I do sense some themes related to envy, but personally, I don't feel that Twin Town is about anything at all, and that most importantly, this lack of thematic stuff is actually one of the film's biggest strengths. Because there's something about the tone that it hits, which enables us as Welsh people to comfortably see ourselves on screen. And trust me, that's not a tone which is easy to set. I think it's hard for people from England, the USA, or even Scotland to truly empathise with the experience of being an invisible country. And I sometimes feel that the Welsh themselves don't realise how important it is to have positive images. I think even the notion of having positive images of oneself can stray into taking yourself seriously territory. And this is why Twin Town is free to be loved by the Welsh, who tend to look upon positive representations of themselves the same way that Stephen Fry looks at a vagina. And when I say positive, I mean stuff like this.
It's gonna be a cold, cold Christmas without.
She fucking loves me, boys!
Cabadilla, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Ability to laugh at oneself is priceless. Along with perhaps Human Traffic, Twin Town is the only Welsh film which is truly loved to this day. I think it's the confidence and the lack of reverence or piety which enables it to walk a few tightropes that lie across its genres.
Morning, boys.
I think its constant contrasting of dramatic threat with comedy is essential to its appeal, and its events are foreshadowed subtly. You do appreciate subtle foreshadowing, don't you? I'll dispense with the I thinks and say that Twin Town is the best Welsh film of all time, one of the best British films, and maybe on my top 20 all-time list. Yes, I can hear you sniggering at the back, but, Your Honour, I plead, let me continue my case.
Tell that one to the clerk of the court and they'll be rolling in the fucking aisles, won't they?
Yeah.
Would I rate it so highly were it not a Welsh film? I think that's a question you can ask any movie which belongs to a particular genre, franchise, canon, or place. Would Return of the Jedi be so loved were it all in Magyar, about a Welsh poet who redeemed his evil uncle at the back end of the Hungarian Revolution? Come to think of it, that does sound pretty awesome, doesn't it?
Edward király angol király léptet fakólován. Hadd látom, úgymond. Mennyit ér a Walesi tartomány?
But I don't think you can separate Twin Town from Wales any more than Jedi from a galaxy far, far away. Or Trainspotting from Scotland. Which was an influence? How can it not be? Trainspotting was produced 2 years previously by many of the same people, and Kevin Allen even had a cameo in it. It's the smallest details on screen which sometimes provide the laughs. See Begbie appearing in Renton's Nightmare complete with a cigarette under the bed sheets, or drinking a bottle of Thunderbird. Or even Dead Man's Shoes, when the bad guys are spiked not by a Jack Daniels, but with a pot noodle. It was only last year, on what was perhaps my 20th viewing of Twin Town, when I spotted this piece of shit. Literal. What I'm trying to say is that Twin Town's Welshness doesn't count against it, and such a well-judged comedic tone can only really be hit by somebody who has an intrinsic understanding of its time, people, and place. As well as Danny Boyle, I feel if there was a contemporary filmmaker that influenced Kevin Allen, it was perhaps Alan Clarke. Clarke was a director pointing his camera at sinker states and empathetic actors to achieve authenticity. Sometimes hilarious, often frightening, always depressing. But to summarise why I think Twin Town is so underrated is that I think it pulls off a tougher balancing act than anything done by the genius Alan Clarke, whose films intentionally avoided any Hollywoodized themes or moments of redemption. Twin Town does have these, but in its own way, which compares and contrasts nicely with Trainspotting's morally ambiguous message. Twin Town's a comedy drama, almost beat for beat. There are no dramatic scenes which don't have some element of humour, and no comic scenes without threat or foreshadow. That's some seriously tough cack to pull off, and as well as Alan, I feel credit must go to the editor, Oral Norrie Otti, the DOP, John Matheson, and about the cast, particularly William Thomas as Bryn and Dougray Scott as Terry. I suspect it could have been influenced also by the early Tarantino films and the Coen brothers' Fargo, but I would argue that Twin Town is bolder and braver than anything put out by those two, and I'll tell you why. Number one, with his first film, Kevin Allen was not pitching to a guaranteed fan base. Number two, it's set in Wales like. And number three, Twin Town is more overtly a comedy than either of those two, and you can tell that by the way it starts and the way it ends. If there's one example of how Twin Town so bravely and masterfully spins plates, it's the ending. This highly unrealistic moment also achieves a kind of authenticity by underscoring with nastiness. It's surely one of the most inventive and sadistic killings in film history, and calls back to an earlier scene we thought was just warm family banter. This complete lack of morality, I feel, definitely goes one further than Trainspotting. Unlike Renton, the Lewis brothers are not learning life lessons, and by heading to Morocco with half a tank of petrol and a life jacket full of coke are definitely not choosing life. I genuinely don't know of another film which elicits all of catharsis, disgust, humour, shock, redemption, renewal, revenge, continuity, instability, tradition in one moment. I cannot think of anything else which could possibly claim to shift tones as well as this. Counterpoint.
Fucking I do.
It in the spot?
It's a shame that Twin Town's crossing over of genres was something so many Welsh films have tried to emulate but without properly learning from. Rather than the forced quirkiness of a fictional Valleys village, it showed an urban and confident side of a real Welsh place which has never been shown since. Because Richard Iwady probably isn't watching. And also because this is Wales, so most of you probably don't even get that reference, do you? It did so by taking risks. If you're a young writer-director and find yourself wondering how to do foreshadowing, how to incorporate comedy, and of course, how to set your film in Wales, Twin Town is a film to be studied and learned from. And that is why I'm here, folks. It's better by far to be just who you are. Wales in the Movies, Gentle Nudge, is now on Patreon. So if you dig this video, if you think what I'm doing has cultural value and you have the pennies, you can support this channel and produce videos such as this for £1 a month. It really does make a huge difference.
As they say in Llandau, ciao for now.